Hello Internet, Vinny D here, once again broadcasting to you from the Fortress of Fragitude, that last bastion of free thought in the free world, and today we are drawing Mimikkyu, the brand new Pokemon for the upcoming Pokemon Sun and Moon. I am not being paid for this. So right off the bat, we're gonna go ahead and work on a gesture drawing. Just gonna frame this whole thing, give it its bones, so to speak. I like using blue, because it'll stand out from my line art, but if you've seen my videos before, you know that already. Right quick, just kinda changing my mind about proportions here. Yeah, so Mimikkyu is a pretty interesting design, and he's incredibly cute. You see, he's actually a ghost Pokemon. Well, ghost/fairy type. Yes, I said ghost, fairy. This is basically a screw you to anti-ghost types, and I love it, because ghosts need more love. Especially this ghost. He is a little shadowy creature that can't stand sunlight, but he wants to be loved. So he wears this Pikachu costume, hoping that people will love him as much as they love Pikachu. It just wants to be loved. It's a little ghosty Pokemon who hates sunlight but wants people to love it. This is basically me as a Pokemon. Mimikkyu is my spirit animal. So anyway, moving on to the line art, you may notice that while the Pikachu face is up there on the costume, the actual face is down there on the body, basically looking like a little Pacman ghost. And as you may notice, I like to merge shadows with the line art. That's a little something of my own style. My influences come a lot from seinen manga, seinen, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Adult-oriented manga. Not that adult. I mean like action stuff. Golgo 13, Berserk, Bastard, Fist of the North Star, Vampire Hunter D, that sort of stuff. Along with lots of hard-boiled comics from the US, most notably Sin City, I think everyone's heard of that one, and the film noir style in general, that grim and gritty look. So I like using lots of heavy, dark areas, and having those shadows merge straight into the line art. The difference being, I like drawing really cute things, so my style ends up being a weird mishmash of gritty, hard-boiled look with adorable things. It works for me. I don't know if it works for you. Some people seem to like it. You seem to like it. I mean, you're watching this video. Please don't click the X. Please don't X out. Love me? Anyway, moving right along, just adding a little bit of hatching, a little bit of dirtying up, details, scratches, just my sort of thing. I think it gives it a little more volume, a little more oomph. But anyway, it's time to move on to coloring, and the first thing I'm going to do is lay down a base color. And the way I do that is I select out the area outside of the line art, and then I invert the selection and go on a layer below the line art, and I can just flood fill that because I've got a nice little silhouette selected out now. And that base color, usually it's whatever's dominant in the color scheme, or it can just be a good base color that everything else shows up well against. I like to use a fairly muted color to start with. Try not to oversaturate things, because we'll be increasing saturation through the shading process, and decreasing in places. But you'll see that when we get to it. Anyway, I also duplicate the line art layer. That allows me to quickly fill in some of the bigger areas with a flood fill, while keeping the line art separate and pristine as well. So on the bottom line art layer for coloring, I'm flood filling, and I leave another one on top untouched. just in case I need to make some corrections. I can also color underneath the line art quickly for small little areas. Moving on to shading, simple process. I just make a transparent layer and I use the paintbrush layer tool. Some people like to use the airbrush. I used to airbrush, but now I prefer the paintbrush. Just like it's more solid lines and better control. Anyway, going on with some black. Come back over with some white for highlights, just wherever it's going to be seeing a little more light or a little less light. Thinking about the direction the light is going to be coming from. I kind of have a habit of making it come from the upper right. Then I change out the normal layer property to the overlay property. As you can see, that causes saturation to also increase and decrease with shadow and light respectively. Then I'm coming back with the smudge brush and doing some blending. Just like blending charcoal or pencils with a blending pencil or blending inks if you're a marker user. I'm also doing that when I do traditional art. So a lot of my traditional art comes over into my digital style as well. I'm more of a traditional artist in my training than a digital artist, still getting the feel for digital art, but I think a lot of the skills transfer. Anyway, coming back on a new layer, and this is a normal layer that's just got transparency set to about 20% opacity, and coming back for the really dark areas, that would be in dark shadow. And there's a train passing nearby. I can't do anything about that. You just kind of learn to live with it. Anyway, filling in the light and shadow. These are going to be a little bit harder than the edges they used before, but I'm still going to come back with my smudge brush and slightly soften the edges. Not as much as the previous layer, because we still want those shadows to be pretty hard and popping, and to call out the details and the folds and everything. But still want to soften them up a little bit. I like to consider the material that it's on. The cloth has softer shadows than the wood, for instance. Things made of hard materials would have even harder shadows. And I think that sort of brings a feel of texture to it. Now we're going to clean it up. To clean it up, I just, again, select everything outside the line art, then go up to the layers with shading and delete everything outside the lines. That way I don't have to worry about staying inside the lines in the first place. I can be as sloppy as I want to be. Now we're going to paint a quick and easy background. I'm going to do this whole thing in one layer, aside from a bit of shading. Paintbrush the ground, paintbrush the trees. I'm using some muted colors here. Once again, mostly tonal grays, fairly muted green. You don't want the background to overpower the foreground. And as it gets further back, we're getting darker and less colorful as we go. And while I'm using blue sky as a backdrop, there won't be much left by the time I'm done. Once I've got a few silhouettes of trees, I'm going with some scrubbier, thinner trees in the background. Silhouettes of vines, doesn't need to be very exact. These painted backgrounds are more about colors and shadows than about lines. But it seems to work. And then I'm going to use the color selector, select out that blue sky, and paint over some darker green to give the feeling of foliage, but I'm cross-hatching it, letting some blue show through. Because you want to give the feeling of leaves and such in the background. We're kind of in a deep, dark, shadowy forest, but it's still light outside. Now I'm hatching up the shadows just the same, because if you think about the light coming through the trees and the branches and leaves everything, there's going to be scattered patches of sun. Finally, darkening up the background with some more shadows, and we're just about done here. That's all there is to it. Mimikkyu, won't you love him? Won't you love this little ghost? He just wants to be loved. Oh yeah, and of course, sign it, because I have a bad habit of forgetting to sign. And there you go. Hope you enjoyed watching me draw. This is Benny D, out.